Hi, good people. It's been quite a while, really, and I'm super excited to be in contact with you once again. And Bash Mutumba is my name, and I'm back with Ugandan Juice, the Ugandan Juice podcast. Well, I'll just dive straight into the top stories this time around. And Joseph Kony, the very villainous guy, is back in the news. Joseph Kony is infamous as one of the most popular or unpopular. The word is the word unpopular? No, well, whatever the word is, but he is very infamous as one of the worst rebels in Uganda. He's been here for, I think, close to 30 years now. Joseph Kony has been torturing Uganda, mostly northern Uganda, for almost all the years that President Museveni has been in power. And the most disturbing thing about this entire Kony thing is that despite all the atrocities he has done, cutting off people's lips, burning up villages, raiding them and stealing property, killing many, raping young girls, sexual slavery, things of the sort, Kony still claims that he's following the 10 Commandments. Yes, that's why he is punishing all these people such that they can follow, such that Uganda as a whole can follow the 10 Commandments. That it doesn't really make sense. This is just religious extremism gone wrong, like totally wrong. We can't even call it a religious thing because it's just too bad that Kony does. But this time around, Kony is back in the news because many of his children, over 50 plus children that he has, have decided to come up together. And according to an organization, these 50 plus children have opened up a WhatsApp chat group whereby they talk to each other to avoid intermarriages between themselves. Yeah, you can imagine such a guy. He has many children to the extent that they're even afraid of having children among themselves. Well, that's how many he has. And there are over 50 mothers too. According to this report, over 50 mothers of these children. But this can be a shocker, of course, because Kony would always take a wife from every village he would get. He would easily take any wife. Some were just slaves to him. Some were official wives that he would take and say, this one is my wife, and no soldier would ever try to tamper with the wife and such things anyway. So it's shocking that these guys have decided to open up a WhatsApp group just to keep in touch with each other and to avoid marriages between themselves. Well, I know it's a weird, far-fetched thing to talk about, but it's actually something worthy talking about because even the Observer newspaper saw it worthy and talked about it earlier. And through their tweet, they said, Joseph Kony's children using WhatsApp to build family bond. The over 40 children from over 50 mothers also want to avoid intermarriages between themselves. That was the Observer newspaper via their Twitter. And the LRA actually does those atrocities following the 10 Commandment extremism that's what I might tell you. And according to all these reports, these children cannot, of course, pay for the sins of the fathers. It doesn't make sense. And even though Kony has been torturing Uganda for many decades, he first came into worldwide attention in around 2010. Yes, around there. And this was because of the Kony 2010 documentary on YouTube. Well, personally, back then I was in my senior one in 2010. I was in my senior one, and back then Facebook was the hit thing. And one of my friends from Vietnam on Facebook actually contacted me and told me, Bash, are you safe? Really, I've just watched this Kony 2010 documentary, and this guy cuts off people's lips. He padlocks, he fixes padlocks into people's lips. He kills people. He takes girls as sex slaves. He burns up villages. He steals and loots. Like, are you safe? And honestly, and to be honest, I had nothing to tell this girl because the truth is these Kony atrocities didn't really hit Kampala because I've never gone further from Kampala. I've never lived in the north. I've never lived in northern Uganda, and most of these things have affected Central African Republic, northern Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo. Those are the parts where Kony was operating from, and it was hard for this girl to believe that actually I was fine. And since it's obvious that Uganda is a very small country, you can hardly prove to someone that really you're safe and that the actions of Kony never reach where you are. But anyway, that was something worth talking about. And it brings up another argument of people complaining about people telling our stories, because when the Kony 2010 documentary came up, many Ugandans were complaining that why is it that these people come from out there and they're telling our stories? Why can't we tell our stories? But well, it's not their fault that you're not telling your own stories. And remember things like the last king of Scotland and the rise and fall of Idi Amin. The stories that we're talking about are former president General Idi Amin Dada, and many of these things were actually outrageous, weird, what's the word I can best use to describe this thing, ludicrous kind of descriptions of our late former president. Really, some of them were just weird propaganda. It wasn't real at all. Western propaganda, things like him eating people's heads, things like him feasting on people's flesh, things of the sort. Of course, the obvious things, historical facts that happened, things like the keeping of the terrorist plane that was hijacked by terrorists that had many Israeli citizens. That was a very bad thing that was done, and that was a fact that can't be hid from. Like, it was a fact done by General Idi Amin Dada. That was something that he did. Conniving with terrorists is not something great at all, because we've been also affected by terrorists very much, Al-Shabaab and all that. So it wasn't something good, honestly. But when people from outside tell our stories, they really mess them up a big deal, because when you look at things like feasting on people's heads and skins and all that stuff, and actually many people believe it, because I was I think a few weeks ago, I was checking out, I was on YouTube, of course, checking out various videos and stuff, and one media house from Tanzania, I think, yeah, that's Diamond's media house, that's Wasafi TV, their YouTube channel had a documentary about Amin, and very sadly, they were all doing these propaganda stories about him and saying he used to feed on people's flesh and something of this. I was like, wow, how can you say such a thing? So it all comes from the fact that foreigners come and tell our stories and really distort them a great deal, and people actually begin believing that whatever was told in that foreign story is actually the real story, which is usually not the case. And things like Queen of Katwe, of course, haven't misrepresented us. Queen of Katwe was a perfect representation of Uganda, and shout outs to Chiwetalu, shout outs to the Kenyan girl in Hollywood, that's Lupita Nyong'o. She really represented us pretty well in that Queen of Katwe story, even though we'd still argue that why wouldn't Disney get a Ugandan lead actor? Well, now there's another story about the Lion King. It's a story that talks about East Africa, specifically Simba, Serengeti. All these stories are East African stories. But shockingly, no single East African artist was chosen to even be part of Beyonce's soundtrack album that's going to be used in the movie, or that was used in the movie. No single person was chosen. No single actor from East Africa. Like, such things are really hurting. I know I've really taken the story to a weird angle, but it's a very sad thing to talk about. Well, back to the happiness anyway. Kenzo has showered Diamond Platnumz with praises. Well, Eddie Kenzo was at the premiere, or the listening party, for Diamond Platnumz DJ, who is also his brother, DJ Romy Jones, at his album listening party. And Eddie Kenzo was very happy to be invited and just talk to the people about the niceness of Diamond Platnumz and how he's so proud of him. And Kenzo actually got so excited to the point that he sang a little bit of his songs to them for a few seconds, and he asked the people actually that are there some Ugandan people in here, and everyone was shouting, yeah, there are Ugandan guys in here. And Kenzo decided to just speak Luganda to these guys, shockingly. Well, it's obvious that he can't speak Swahili, so he decided to just build some Luganda words with English in there. And I was really worried for those guys, because I'm pretty sure they didn't understand anything he was saying when he switched to the Luganda part. But fine, he was so excited, the emotions were too much, so he couldn't just express all of it easily. But it's all good, and I was impressed that Eddie Kenzo really represented us very well. He did a very great speech. And that very thing reminded me of this thing that's walking around social media or prevailing around social media about the top 10 most viewed Ugandan music videos on YouTube. And number 1 is Maria Rosa, Eddie Kenzo. Number 2, City Loss, Eddie Kenzo. Maria Rosa is at 29 million and City Loss is at 23 million. And the third is also City Loss, but the Vevo version, 20 million as well. The fourth is a Freestyle by Eddie Kenzo, 13 million. The fifth, wait for it, Eddie Kenzo again, 12 million. The sixth, again Eddie Kenzo, 12 million. The seventh, Badilisha by Jose Chameleon, 8.6 million. And that's the only Chameleon entrance in there, or any artist that's not Eddie Kenzo, because the 8th is Let's Go by Eddie Kenzo, 7.5 million. The 9th is Jambole by Eddie Kenzo, 6.3 million. And the 10th is So Good by Eddie Kenzo, 6.2 million. So you can see how much Eddie Kenzo is of an ambassador of Uganda to the outside world. Really, I personally am so proud of Eddie Kenzo. I personally am, and I'm very sure very many Ugandans are so proud of him. And even though most of his music is not for the local market, he mainly sings for the international market. He doesn't really care much. He's always releasing videos almost every week. I think he's the guy that has invested most in music videos in this country. He releases videos almost every single week, and most of those songs are not for the local market. It's mainly dance music, just once in a while when he produces songs that are mainly for the local market. But either way, you're so proud of Musuza. He's an amazing talented guy. And well, now back to the ruckus. Now Golola has decided to create ruckus. Well, you know, Golola Moses is one of the most famous Ugandan personalities, sports personalities, and if you're talking about kickboxing as a sport in Uganda, you're definitely talking about Moses Golola. This guy single-handedly lifted up kickboxing as a sport onto the pedestal. It wasn't known before he came in this country. It wasn't really known as a sport till Golola Moses lifted it up single-handedly. And one shocker this time around, the main thing that Golola was using to market this sport was his charisma and his jokes and his funny things that he used to say to his opponents before the fights. And usually Golola used to talk about things like being the only man that could look at a woman and she gets pregnant, Golola Moses of Uganda, the fact that he could drink a full bucket of porridge, the fact that he would eat how many kilograms of food and things of the sort, like funny comic stuff that would sell all his shows. And none of Golola's shows would really flop. They've never flopped. Every time he stages a show, it's a sellout. And he's gotten ambassadorial deals with the likes of Rock Boom Energy Drink and various other things. And he's also been a tourism ambassador. Well, Golola has done a great deal of things, but this time around the fire was reducing, and he decided to do something that none of us really expected. So there was a presser, and there were him and his opponent. They were talking to the media, of course, about the show that was coming up. And at one moment, the MC decided to say, right about now, let's begin the interviews in English. And that's when the problems came out. If you don't know why they came out, I'll give you a small background. In Uganda, there are mainly two languages that are spoken. It's English and Luganda. So normally when there is an interview or a press conference, there will always be two versions of interviewing. The presser would be held in two versions or two languages, I would say. That's English and Luganda. So they might the journalists will begin asking you first in the English segment, and then you'll answer all questions in English, and then after they'll ask you in Luganda. Why? Because normally all major media houses, actually every single media house in this country, for the English ones, they'll always have a Luganda bulletin. For example, NTV has NTV Akaungezi at 7 p.m, which is a Luganda bulletin, and they also have NTV Tonight at 9 p.m, which is an English bulletin. So they need content both in English and Luganda. That's for the main media houses. And also it's the same case for the radios. For example, KFM will have the English bulletin, and it will also have the Luganda bulletin. That's just how it is, apart from just a few stations which are entirely Luganda stations, which will just have Luganda programs throughout. from morning to evening. And also they will have some English news bulletins. So usually the presses are done both in Luganda and English, and that's something that everyone knows. Everyone in the public segment or the public space really knows this very well. They'll always get interviewed both in English and Luganda. So it's weird that Golola decided to go berserk when he was told that they were supposed to now begin doing interviews in English. He was like, really? In English? And he said, how can you get interviewed in English here in the land of the Kabaka? Kabaka is the cultural leader in central Uganda, in Buganda Kingdom. So it's like, how can he be speaking English in the land of Kabaka? Then he stood up, he was talking that in Uganda, stood up, threw away the table that he was seated next to, threw it away, he stood and he threw a punch at the guy. Luckily the guy ducked away and the punch didn't get him, but Golola wanted to hit him right in the face for trying to speak English in Kabaka's land. Imagine. So it was just something weird, but intentionally it was a stunt. You could easily see that was Golola's attempt at doing another stunt, because people were so used to his usual stunts of deciding to abuse the clans, the opponents, and saying, I'm going to kick this guy till he screams Mama Nyabo, I'm going to kick this guy till he cries for more money, I'm going to kick this guy such that he tells his woman to bring him food in the ring, things of the sort. So Golola, this time around, he decided to do something a little unique, and really, all I can say is it worked, and every single person is talking about Golola's fight and the way he almost beat up the guy at a press conference. Weird guy, that one. Yeah, he's always loved such attention stunts, and they've always worked for him. But trust me, this time around, not even his promoter was ready for this stunt. And after this particular one, he was invited to Spark TV, of course, because of this stunt that he did. He was invited to Spark TV. Spark TV is the Luganda sister station to NTV Uganda. So Spark TV is entirely a Luganda station. He was invited to Spark TV to talk about this entire thing, and in one of the moments, the presenter decided to ask him, Golola, in Luganda, of course, Golola, who is your ideal woman like? What's your ideal woman like? And Golola was answering like, it's you. And the presenter wasn't even believing. Like, really, Golola, what are you talking about? It's you. And the guy just stood up and decided to carry her up. Yeah, he just carried her, and it wasn't believable. The girl was screaming like, Golola, they're taking us, producer, help me out. But it actually happened like that, and Golola Moses is not a very simple guy. That's what he did to the presenter. And anyway, in the end, Golola is the winner in this whole thing. Golola Moses of Uganda, we are so proud of him. He has really lifted up the kickboxing game. Yeah, and well, that's it. On the other hand, Sheila Karogashumba never stops impressing, and this time around she was talking to Bukede TV, also another Luganda station in Uganda, and she said God's plan is the guy that has spent the most money in Ugandan bars ever since it started up. Wow. She said that actually, and she was bold with it. She said she respects the likes of Don Ivan Samwanga, but God's plan has done it because he first did it in UK where alcohol was more expensive, and he's now doing it in Uganda. Well, most people came up and started to diss Sheila, many saying that she doesn't know what she's talking about, she hasn't seen money, she's just excited, she's just love struck, she's just smitten with love and things of the sort. But I'll personally wager in and bring up my own opinion in this. Mike Ezra was one of those socialites that have spent a lot of money in Uganda, and one thing actually about most of these socialites is they usually appear once and disappear. They appear during the summer and go back and work outside Uganda. Normally they come from the diaspora, so they go and work mainly blue collar jobs and then come back here and spend money like crazy. You get? So there was Mike Ezra in around 2005. I think I was in lower primary school back then, but the guy would move in a chopper. In 2005, that was a very big deal, by the way, traveling in a chopper. And he would come to Uganda Cranes matches and give those guys a lot of money, though we were not lucky enough to qualify like we are lately. But the guy used to give those guys a lot of money and promise them more if they qualified for AFCON. But, well, Mike Ezra was there. He was a big spender. And there were arguments that most of his money was being gotten from minerals and stuff, but no proof was there anyway. And then there came the late Don Ivan Semwanga. This guy spent money with his wife. And one thing about Ivan is that sometimes he would spend money on very expensive alcohol always, but sometimes he would just get it back on credit. It wasn't money that was always paid up. Sometimes it was on credit. Bad Black also spent money, and that was from the white man that she thugged the money from, about 11 billion Uganda shillings from a Muzungu man. That was Bad Black's loot from Greenhalgh, who they later even shared a child with. And Brian White also. Now Brian White is the guy that I had started to bow for really a lot, because like I told you, most of these socialites, they would be outside Uganda and then they would come back during the summer. They would work from outside and come back and spend the money in Uganda during the summer. But Brian White, that's why people were so scared of this guy. Brian White was spending money every single day, Monday to Sunday, for like close to 6 months constantly, and he was never paying for things on credit. He always had bags of money with him, stashes of cash, bags filled with money, currency. Trust me, this guy would spend money every single time, and he was never giving out stuff on credit in a bar or getting stuff on credit and paying up the following day. Never. He always had his money in cash. So Brian White was just a scary guy, even though all he wanted was to be loved by people, but they didn't love him. Even though he spent a lot of money, he even went to places like Arua and took bicycles together with Zari. A lot of stuff, man. Things that would be seen that he actually has the money, and he would never go broke because he stayed for many months. Though he's just silent lately, but he's been here for so long, and he's a guy that I personally have come to bow for. Really, Brian White has spent a lot of money. I think it goes back to Sheila's argument that God's plan has spent money in bars. Brian White hasn't been much of a bar guy, and he hasn't been much of a ladies guy, so I think that's why he hasn't spent a lot. But well, that's it. That's precisely it. And about that AFCON issue, I told you about how Mike Ezra used to spend on Ugandans, and we never really went anywhere close to the AFCON qualifications. Well, this time around we qualified and we reached a round of 16, some place that we last reached in 1976 during General Idi Amin's time. Back then we even reached the finals and we were beaten by Ghana on the finals. Well, this time around, after this Egypt session, we've had 3 of our players get signed by Egypt. Emmanuel Okwi, who was in Simba in Tanzania, got signed by Etihad Alexandria. Abdul Umala is now of Pyramids FC, and then Khalid Aucho, the midfielder, is now at El Makassa. So really, Egypt. One interesting thing by Asha Komugisha, a BBC journalist, a Ugandan journalist that works with BBC, tweeted this thing and said, less than 2 weeks since the end of AFCON, 3 Uganda Cranes players have joined Egypt teams. Egypt should just host the next AFCON editions. Ugandans don't mind at all. Well, just intending to be funny. Anyway. And then Stella Nyanzi has decided to actually undress again. You know, she became famous for undressing back then when Dr. Mahmoud Mamdani at Makerere University, MISA, that's the research section of Makerere University. Apparently, Dr. Nyanzi didn't want to lecture, and Dr. Mahmoud Mamdani wanted Dr. Nyanzi to lecture. Professor Mahmoud Mamdani wanted Dr. Stella Nyanzi to go and lecture people. Stella Nyanzi argued that her job at the university was research and not lecturing. Wow. So they had a problem and her office was closed up, and she decided to undress in the presence of every single person, like undress stuck naked, like the breasts were out and everything. She just was left just with the knicker, and she almost pulled it off too, and that was live on her own Facebook. So after that, every single media house was there covering her, and she wasn't apologetic about it at all. That's how she decided to protest injustice, according to her. But after that, she decided to now go political, a political activist and stuff, and that's when things started falling apart. She also had a stint in Stellenbosch University in South Africa after gaining that fame, but getting so political is when the problems really started coming up. That's when she started talking about the president and his family and things of the sort, and she found herself in jail. The first time she really came back badly off, almost she was in a very bad situation, very small. She had lost a lot of weight. She had very many diseases, venereal diseases. Apparently she had been infected with STIs in the prison in Luzira, and according to her, she was teaching many of these women how to use social media and stuff. But then she decided to do this stuff again and abuse and insult the president's mom and his wife, the first lady, again, and she was sent to jail right again. So she's been there for a while, close to a year. She was there since last year, the end of last year, until today is when yesterday is when they made the sentence to her. That she's been sentenced to 8 months in prison. And according to Stella, she wanted all the charges to be put against her to be found holding, like she wanted to be found guilty, mostly of offending the president, because that charge was dropped. She wasn't found guilty of that, but she personally wanted to be found guilty, and she was telling the magistrate that, you know what, I want you to find me guilty of offending President Yoweri Museveni. I want you to find me something also. She really got thick skin lately, and she doesn't mind going back to prison. Rare person to find, honestly. Like, you're being left out and you say I don't want, because initially, actually, among these 8 months that she's been in prison, at first she was saying that at first she was being given bail, and she was like, no, I want to just go back. I'm teaching these people how to do this. Like, imagine, she just doesn't mind being in prison. And the headline of this was that her sentence was read to her while she was in prison remotely. She wasn't brought into court. She was in prison, and there was an online what would I say, people were seeing it through Skype. I would say maybe Skype is the best way to describe it. Like, it was via video, like you're seeing her the other side and she's looking at what's in court as well, while everything is being read to her. And that's when she protested, and lucky enough, this time she decided to undress as well, but lucky enough it was via video, and it had to be blurred off, like you had to blur it off straight away. She pulled off her top and everything would be seen, but she had they blurred it off because it was, well, via video. And that's how serious Stella Nyanzi was. And another highlight from that very time is that people that were protesting now inside the courtroom decided to just go overboard and hit the magistrate, a judge. They hit the judge with a bottle. Imagine, Ugandans are now so obsessed with hitting people with bottles. They hit the judge with a bottle, like a water bottle. She was still reading the sentence and stuff, and then a water bottle hit her on the head. Ugandans are so addicted to using bottles, really. And this takes me actually to another thing. Fresh Daddy has been hit with bottles. You know, Fresh Daddy started to sing because of his son Fresh Kid. So he realized that when he was trying hard to travel the world with the son, people didn't want to just pay for him to. So he decided to sing himself. And you know how Ugandans just love people that sing some random stuff, nonsense or whatever. They just decided to like that guy and like his music. So he also just decided to do it and sing and stuff. And one of his songs was Amazike, talking about money and how it's fun to make money in Kampala. Like, look for money while you're making it, that kind of thing, Maziki. And when he went and performed recently on stage, he was hit with bottles. Fresh Daddy, like many bottles. And he just kept on performing. He didn't like to leave the stage. And when asked later after why he kept on performing while people showed that they didn't like him to perform on stage, he was like, no, that's a very normal thing. These people came and paid for this show to see me, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, they were enjoying. Those who threw the stage, then those who threw bottles at me were just maybe overjoyed. They were happy to see me. Imagine. And he was like, but don't you think throwing bottles at you is a bad thing? And he was like, no, really, that's a normal thing. Even Bebe Cool was hit with bottles. Did he die? He brought that other argument of Bebe Cool. Well, and it reminds me of how Bebe Cool was chased off stage with bottles at the Swang's All-Star concert where Taras Riley was performing, and the show almost died because back then he was showing support to the president and stuff like that. Well, most youths pro people power, the Bobby Wine side, so that's why he got chased off stage and even stopped performing for like 3 months. He stopped performing officially, Bebe Cool. So Fresh Daddy didn't decide to stop performing or leave stage. No, what he decided to do was actually release another song called Obuchupa. This guy is just so weird. And well, many people are sad, actually not happy with the way he's doing it, though some actually don't mind him. Obuchupa is just talking about the bottles. Obuchupa is a Luganda word which means the bottles. And most people actually are like, this guy should just stop singing, because the reasons they give are mainly because he's spoiling the chance of the son. Because any promoter that would like to get Fresh Kid would easily now just take Fresh Daddy, because you can't take both of them. You'll be like, I can't take both Fresh Kid and Fresh Daddy, let me just take Fresh Daddy this time round, you get, or let me just take Fresh Kid. And in the end, the shine of the kid is being killed, like inadvertently. And others are giving another argument which I don't support. This argument is that he's not talented, so he shouldn't sing. Really, I don't support that. Maybe the argument about him spoiling the chance for the kid makes sense, but this one of him not being talented, I don't support, because entertainment is about making people happy. Like, if people are finding what you're doing interesting, then it's entertainment. I don't see a problem with that. He has no talent, fine. If you have talent, sing. Many talented people are not being appreciated. That's the same thing that Cardi B was talking about back then. People are complaining because she always sings about P-U-S-S-Y in all her songs, and how great her P-U-S-S-Y is. Yeah, how she likes to do it with Offset and stuff like that. And people are like, she doesn't sing sense, she sing about the same nonsense. And she was like, hey, come on, people sing this sense and you never support it. And this is the same thing I'm saying. It's about someone being an entertainer. So people should cut Fresh Daddy some slack if this is the argument they're bringing about talent and stuff. But if the Fresh Kid argument is what they bring, then it's valid, because really I hadn't given Fresh Kid a lot of time. I decided to listen to Fresh Kid. Damn, Fresh Kid is so talented. I listened to a rendition of his of that song Taki Taki Rumba, and the kid flowed. He flowed in that Spanish hook by La Miconga, that kind of thing. I don't know how to sing it, but the kid flowed in that thing, and I believe that Fresh Kid is actually a super talent. For a kid at 6 years of age, really, he's so talented, and I hope the dad doesn't really kill his shine. He should just stop and leave the kid to shine. That's what I really support. And well, for this time round, I think the Miss Uganda thing is already stale. The thing that happened, the scenario that happened between Zari and Fabiola, I think it's already stale. But my highlight for the entire Miss Uganda thing, it was the fact that Queen Abenacho is a great Miss Uganda, and I believe, and I would say it outrightly, that Queen really deserved every single praise that she got. She deserved and still deserves to be Miss World Africa. And if it were possible, she would have been Miss Uganda every single year. I would vote her up every single year. She would be just like our president is, Miss Uganda forever. Because really, Queen Abenacho is great. The way she speaks, her articulation, the way she carries herself. Damn, Queen is like, she's worth it. Like, she deserves the accolade of being our very best Miss Uganda ever since this stuff started. Well, I've had everything to say, and I'm happy I've shared this with you once again. And that's all from me today. Well, thank you for supporting Ugandan Juice, those on AfriPods, those on YouTube. Thank you for supporting Ugandan Juice podcast. My name is Bash Mutumba. You can check me out on Instagram at Bash Mutumba. Well, see you then.